Story of the Black Cat. May 26, 1990. I'm an American, not an African American. That was my great uncle Rudy from Chicago. Family and friends had gathered to celebrate the graduation of my little brother Jason from Cal State University, Northridge. He went to an all-black graduation. And the day after, as we gathered for breakfast at the home of my family in Los Angeles, California, everybody started to complain that there was no press in the paper about the black graduation. No press whatsoever. Soon the debate about the graduation devolved into a debate about race names, what we choose to call ourselves. Family and friends separated to different camps. Some people preferring the term Negro Americans, other people prefer the term Black Americans, and still others prefer the terms African Americans. Almost no one wanted to be called colored, and nobody was yet wanted to embrace the term Pan-African. Drying her hands on the dish towels after serving breakfast for 12 relatives, my grandmother cleared her throat. We called her Mama Jennie. We didn't call her grandmother or grandma. We called her Mama Jennie. She was a short, round woman with big glasses and silvery gray hair. She looked like a black Mrs. Santa Claus, but baked better. And you could always count on Mama Jennie to illuminate a debate with one of her old stories. She began. They can call me African, or they can call me Negro if they want. It really doesn't matter to me. Years ago, they captured my great-great-grandfather in Africa and brought him to America. And my great-grandmother, she was a mulatto slave on a Tennessee plantation before the Civil War. Her name was Jennie Lindsay, and my mama named me after her. Jennie was a mulatto slave with blonde hair and fair skin. She almost looked white. Her father was Master Harrison, the plantation owner. Master Harrison was Irish, you know. I said, Harrison doesn't sound Irish. My grandmother snapped, he was Irish. Okay. My grandmother continued her story. And Jennie's mother was a half black, half Iroquois Indian slave named Julia. But her slave name was Elizabeth Harrison. I started getting confused with all these different Jiminy's and Julias around. I asked, well, was Jennie Indian? Mama Jennie said, no. Jennie was a quarter Indian because her mother was half Indian. So Jennie was a quarter Indian. Now Jennie and her mother and her father, a black man, all lived in this mansion with their the master, Master Harrison. Back in those days, they had what they called house slaves. There were some slaves who worked in the fields, and there were some that worked in the mansion. My grandmother, she was a house slave. Jennie, she worked upstairs as a servant, and her mother worked as the cook. And I don't know what her father did, but I suppose he was the butler. But it was Jennie's job to come down every morning and light the stove in the kitchen so that her mother could come down later and get the cooking done. That's what she did. She came down and she lighted the stove in the kitchen. But her mother, the half Indian woman, Master Harrison got to her, which is why they had Jennie listen to the story. I'm going to think, gee whiz, that sounds romantic. An Irish plantation owner and a half Iroquois, half a black woman getting together. I asked, so how did Julia fall in love with Master Harrison? The story stopped. The faces of the black women in the group gasped. I had stepped on a landmine, which was the rape of black African women by the white masters. And I had thoroughly embarrassed my mother, an educator. She growled through her teeth. It was not love, it was lust. I was so stupid, I did not know what the word lust meant. I proceeded to ask my grandmother another question, digging myself further into a hole and totally embarrassing my mother. I rephrased my question to Mama Jennie. Well, how did Jennie fall in lust with Master Harrison? Everybody, the silence spread throughout the entire gathering there. My grandmother, she had to debate how to go on with the story. She said, well, that was a thing then. Jennie had a husband who was black, and Master Harrison, he had a wife who was white, but that didn't stop Master Harrison from getting to Julia and having a baby. She proceeded to go on with the story. Well, they all lived together in this big mansion with white columns. And Master Harrison, he had a wife, you know, and she was a real sweet person, Now, here's why. All the slaves loved her, and even though Jennie was a slave and was a bastard child, she still taught Jennie how to read and write. She was a real sweet person. Everybody loved her. But by and by, Master Harrison's wife died. And he got this other woman. None of the slaves liked her from the very beginning. This Mrs. Harrison, she hated Jennie. Because how could Mrs. Harrison establish her own household with Master Harrison if Jennie, the mulatto bastard slave, was still living in the house acting wild? So, but Master Harrison didn't want to change the way they had lived, and I always lived in the South. And so, Mrs. Harrison, she got a black cat. And she called that black cat Nigger. That black cat would be right behind Mrs. Harrison. But still, she would call his name out loud so that Jennie could hear. Here, nigger, nigger. Here, nigger.
Sorry.
Jennie shot her the stink eye. What? Mrs. Harrison says, oh, I wasn't talking to you, honey. I was talking to the cat. Oh, and by the way, I want you to dust the parlor today. It is filthy. Jennie says, I'm only supposed to serve upstairs, ma'am. And Mrs. Harrison says, if you don't dust the parlor, I will have you whipped. Jennie says, you better not whip me. Now Jennie, she had never been whipped before. Her Master Harrison loved and protected her as his daughter. And so, because Mrs. Harrison could not whip Jennie herself, she started to complain to Master Harrison about all the things that Jennie was doing and not doing. Look at this. She scorched my linens. You have to whip her and put her in her place. Master Harrison says, oh, okay, I will talk with her. Now Jennie, she started to complain to her father too. She says, Father, Mrs. Harrison always gives me more work than I can do, and she calls her black cat nigger. And Master Harrison says, well, Jenny, if you don't behave, now you've always been really good. I've never had any problems with you, but if you don't behave, if you don't listen to the new Mrs. Harrison, I will whip you. And Jenny says, I don't like it. And so, Jenny hated Mrs. Harrison, and she hated her black cat nigger. That cat nigger, she had a habit of every night after the fire went out in the stove and they had to cool down, that cat would crawl into the stove, keep warm under some cold Tennessee nights. And every morning, when Jenny got up, she had to shoot the cat out of the stove, and that cat would jump out of the stove and go tracking the ashes across the floor, which Jenny now had to scrub before her mother came up to start cooking, and before Mrs. Harris could see the tracks of footprints across the floor. She had to clean those footprints up. So one morning, after Jenny and Mrs. Harrison had a real bad row the night before, and her father would not do anything about the cat nigger, Jenny came down to the kitchen. Now, the cat nigger, she was sleeping in the oven as usual. And Jenny didn't do anything. She just tiptoed to the oven and eased the stove door shut. I asked, Mama Jenny, did Jenny know that nigger was in the oven? Jenny snapped. Of course, she knew that nigger was sleeping in the oven. It was the cat's habit of sleeping in the stove every night after the fire had died down.
Poor cat.
And so, Jenny lit the stove and began to back away. Nigger began to howl and scratch inside.
Sounds like that's pretty good there.
What was that? Everybody in the big house awoke. Mrs. Harrison comes running downstairs, calling the name of a cat. Here, nigger, nigger. Here, nigger. Here, nigger, nigger. Nigger, nigger. Here, nigger, nigger. And she began to smell something burning coming from the kitchen. Oh, what's that? Oh, that horrible. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no. Mrs. Harrison runs to the kitchen, flings open the stove, and she screams, there was nigger, burning on the coals, scorched to a crisp.
Oh.
Jenny did this! Jenny did this! She rages. Where is she? Oh, she went to go get her master. I better find her. Jenny had fled the big house. She was out in the tobacco fields. The thing about Jenny, she's supposed to be a house slave. She was not supposed to be out in the tobacco fields, but she was out in the tobacco fields. And Mrs. Harrison finds her and grabs the girl. The girl fights her off, beating at her missus, and finally says, you will not whip me. You will not whip me. Mrs. Harrison says, just you wait till your father comes out of the field. He will whip you. And they both stood apart, looking across the tobacco fields as Master Harrison approaches. Mrs. Harrison runs up to him to tell her side of the story first. Jenny burned nigger in the stove! Jenny burned nigger in the stove! You have to whip her! You have to whip her! And Master Harrison, she looks at the thin trail of smoke rising from the kitchen chimney. Then she looks at Jenny and approaches her. She begins to back away through the tobacco fields, the leaves wet with the morning dew. Mr. Harrison says, Jenny, what you do? You done burned up her cat. You burned up her cat. You know how much Mrs. Harrison loves nigger, and you burned up her cat. Well, Jenny, You know that was wrong. And Jennie says, she started it first. Well, Jennie, I'm sorry, but I've told you and I've warned you. I told you that you had to listen to the new Mrs. Harrison, and now I had no choice now but to whip you. So come on, Jennie, let's go to the barn there. Jennie, she starts to back away. Well, come on, Jennie, let's go to the barn. But Jennie, she starts to run across the tobacco fields. And Master Harrison starts running after her. Jennie, come back! Jennie, don't run, Jennie! Don't run, Jennie! Don't run! But Jennie kept on running. And Master Harrison, he was furious. He was mad, angry about what she had done and that she had burned up the cat. He just had to try to stop her. She was a young girl. She was moving across the tobacco fields. And so out of anger, he picked up the hatchet from the wood pile and he threw it. Boom! The hatchet hit Jennie in the back of the head. Ah! And she falls to the tobacco fields. The hatchet hit Jennie in the back of the head. She was hit in the back of the head with the hatchet and falls to the field. Master Harrison screams, "Oh, Jennie! Oh, I'm sorry! I didn't mean to do it! Oh, Jennie! Oh, Jennie! Help! Somebody! Oh, go get the doctor in town! Help!" And he starts running to her. Jennie was conscious. She was conscious. She could hear the voices of people shouting and the slaves coming across the field and people coming from the big house. And Master Harrison coming to her and picking her up from the fields with her head hanging down and the hatchet in the back of her head. And she was conscious, hearing all these voices. And Master Harrison takes out the hatchet and the blood is pouring out. And he starts to carry this wounded girl into the big house. While other people started galloping to town to go get the doctor. And he lays her in bed and he stays with her when other doctors came and they took care of Jennie. And he cried and he cried and he tried and he tried to take care of his daughter. He was so sorry that it came to this. And Jennie, she survived the hatchet blow to the back of her head. Listen to my grandma. I asked her, what was Mrs. Harrison doing? Oh, she was just standing there or watching. But Grandma never did say whether or not they came to like each other afterwards. But things were not as bad as before. Because Jennie said, Mrs. Harrison, she saw how bad that her father had hurt her. She felt very, very sad and sorry about that. But by and by, when the Civil War ended and all the slaves were freed, Master Harrison let Jennie go and gave her the silverware, bedding, mattresses, and other valuable things. And the family and all the slaves, they traveled through the countryside, living in the ruins of burnt-out houses throughout the South. One morning, when Jennie awoke, she found a snake had curled up in her bed, suckling the milk from her breast. What? I said. That detail so horrified me that when I wrote that detail down in my diary, I censored it. I wrote something floral that said, after the Reconstruction period, the slaves would travel through the countryside, and my grandmother, Jennie, woke up in her nice bed in the ruins, and she found a snake curled up in bed with her, like that, a cat curled up in the oven.
Oh.
But it wasn't the truth. What I remember the snake on the breast. So horrified by that, it was like, I can handle a hatchet blow to the back of my head. I cannot handle a snake sucking my body parts. No way.
Oh.
And so,
gross.
and I included my May 26, 1990 journal entry with my great-great-grandmother, Jennie, told this story to her children, who told this story to their children, and now Mama Jennie had told this story to me, and now I have told this story to you. But then, I closed my May 26, 1990 journal and stored it in a garage for 23 years. In 2013, I was driving down I-5 from Oakland to LA. My head turned to the left when I passed the turnoff to Mama Jennie's home in Victorville. I regret not spending more time with my grandmother hearing her stories. In 2012, when my parents died, I found an audio cassette of my grandmother, Mama Jennie, telling the story of the black cat to my brother, a Baltimore Sun reporter. And that prompted me to go looking for my own 1990 journal entry, pull that out of the garage. Now, I look at my journal entry very differently now. There are some details I misheard, but the audio recording had. But there are other details that I recorded down in my diary, which the audio recording did not lack. For example, the name of the plantation owner and the state. That allowed me to actually Google and find that the Harrison plantation is still there. Standing like something out of Gone with the Wind, with the big white collar, the big brick building on top of a hill.
Wow.
What, is that it? And there are stories. There are some stories that want to be told. They will slither through the smoldering ruins of your life and the lives of everyone you knew to find the one to nourish it.
Yes. Yes.
What I would not give right now to have my grandmother here,
Really?
telling her stories to you, and me in the audience listening to her, writing her stories down, asking my stupid questions. But now I get it. Now it's my turn.
Yes.
Now it is my turn to tell the story. It is my turn to tell the old stories and to carry them forward into the future.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Bravo, bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tell
you.
those stories.
Collect the stories, listen to them, ask about them, ask about the
Yes,
stories.
really.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
What a
man,
rich story. Wow.
Powerful,
Wow.
Andre.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful.
It's very
Yes, wow.
Thank you.
Pay attention to the stories, really.
powerful. Yes. Yeah, honor those stories.
And
Right?
honor them.
Asking me questions, even if
Their
it's
stories.
stupid ones, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thanks, Andre.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and remind us that we carry with us.
To advise of what we take advantage of,
Mm-hmm.
what we didn't take advantage of.